Have you ever wondered why some people seem to retreat into their shells the moment things get too real in relationships? Today we'll explore exactly how dismissive avoidants were built and the fascinating psychology behind those who keep their hearts locked away like precious treasures in a vault. Picture someone like Chuck Bass from Gossip Girl, charming on the surface, yet masterfully keeping everyone at arm's length. These individuals weren't born this way. They were carefully crafted through years of experiences that taught them a simple lesson: emotional distance equals safety. Understanding how dismissive avoidants develop reveals the intricate web of childhood experiences, cognitive patterns, and survival mechanisms that shape adult relationships. The blueprint for emotional detachment doesn't appear overnight. It's constructed brick by brick, starting in those crucial early years when tiny humans learn whether the world is safe enough to be vulnerable in. What makes this particularly intriguing is how these patterns become so automatic that the person carrying them often has no idea they're following an invisible script written decades earlier. The story becomes even more complex when considering the cognitive biases that reinforce these patterns. Confirmation bias plays a starring role, as dismissive avoidants unconsciously collect evidence that proves relationships are unreliable while dismissing contradictory information. But here's where it gets really interesting. These same defense mechanisms that once provided protection can become the very barriers preventing the deep connections their hearts secretly crave. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Consider the tale of a bright 7-year-old who came home from school bursting with excitement about winning the spelling bee. Racing through the front door, eager to share this triumph, the child found their parent buried in work papers, barely glancing up to mutter a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before returning to more important matters. This scene repeated itself countless times. Soccer goals celebrated alone, scraped knees tended to in solitude, bedtime stories replaced by the blue glow of television screens. Fast forward 15 years, and that same child, now grown, sits across from someone special at dinner. When their companion leans forward, eyes sparkling with genuine interest, asking about hopes and dreams, something inside immediately recoils. The walls go up faster than a drawbridge at the first sign of enemy approach. What happened in that moment reveals everything about how dismissive avoidants were constructed. The child's brain, brilliant in its adaptability, learned a crucial survival lesson. Emotional needs lead to disappointment, so the safest strategy is not to have them at all. Like Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You, though he represents the extreme end, that child developed an elaborate internal system designed to protect against future hurt. The difference is that dismissive avoidants don't become obsessive. Instead, they become masters of emotional self-sufficiency. But here's the twist that makes this story even more compelling. Years later, when genuine connection appears, the same neural pathways that once provided protection now sound alarm bells. The brain, still running on that old programming, whispers warnings. Remember what happened last time you cared this much? And just like that, the person who could be the one gets categorized as a threat to be managed rather than a gift to be treasured. Now, let's examine the practical reality of what this means for relationships and daily life. The first crucial insight involves recognizing that dismissive avoidance isn't a character flaw. It's a sophisticated coping mechanism that once served a vital purpose. Think of it like armor that was necessary during battle but becomes cumbersome during peacetime. The person wearing it needs to consciously decide when it's safe to remove it piece by piece. Understanding the confirmation bias component becomes essential here. Dismissive avoidants have become expert collectors of evidence that supports their worldview that relationships are unreliable. When their partner arrives 5 minutes late, it confirms that people can't be counted on. When someone expresses strong emotions, it proves that feelings make people unpredictable and therefore unsafe. This selective attention to relationship threats, while minimizing positive experiences, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that reinforces the original protective strategy. The availability heuristic also plays a significant role in this pattern. Because memories of disappointment and emotional pain are often more vivid and easily recalled than moments of connection and safety, the brain overestimates the likelihood of future relationship problems. It's similar to how people overestimate the danger of airplane travel, because plane crashes make headlines while safe flights don't. Dismissive avoidants remember every relationship disappointment in high definition, while the sweet moments remain fuzzy and forgettable. Breaking through these patterns requires developing what psychologists call earned security, essentially rewiring the brain's relationship operating system through new experiences and conscious awareness. The first step involves recognizing these cognitive biases in action. When that familiar urge to pull away surfaces, instead of automatically following it, there's power in pausing to ask, is this reaction based on present reality or past programming? Creating new neural pathways means deliberately practicing vulnerability in small, manageable doses. Like Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris, learning to navigate unfamiliar cultural territory, developing secure attachment patterns requires patience and willingness to feel awkward while learning new emotional skills. Start with low-stakes situations, sharing a minor worry with a trusted friend or expressing appreciation more directly than feels natural. These small acts of emotional courage gradually teach the nervous system that intimacy doesn't always equal danger. The next crucial step involves challenging the confirmation bias directly. This means consciously looking for evidence that contradicts the old story about relationships being unreliable. Keep a mental note of times when people follow through on their promises, when emotional conversations lead to deeper connection rather than conflict, and when vulnerability is met with care rather than judgment. Like Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl eventually learning to trust in love despite her fears, this process requires actively collecting new data about what relationships can be. Perhaps most importantly, understanding that healing happens in relationship, not in isolation. While self-sufficiency served as protection, genuine security develops through repeated experiences of being seen, understood, and valued by others. This doesn't mean becoming dependent or losing personal identity. Instead, it means expanding the definition of strength to include the courage to need others and the wisdom to let them need you in return. The journey from dismissive avoidance to secure attachment isn't about fixing something broken. It's about updating an outdated security system. Those early experiences that taught emotional self-reliance weren't meaningless. They developed resilience, independence, and strength that remain valuable assets. The goal isn't to abandon these qualities, but to expand the emotional repertoire to include connection alongside autonomy. Remember that everyone carries some version of these protective patterns. The person sitting across from you at dinner, the colleague who seems so confident, the friend who appears to have it all figured out. Everyone learned strategies for navigating a world that sometimes felt unsafe for their tender hearts. Understanding how dismissive avoidants were built creates compassion not just for others, but for the younger version of yourself who did whatever was necessary to survive and thrive. The most beautiful relationships happen when two people can see past each other's armor to the vulnerable human underneath, creating space for both protection and connection to coexist. That's where real love lives, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of courage.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel. because you deserve beautiful relationships.